I am wearing my orange peace love enough T-shirt for Jamie Guttenberg, the daughter of our dear friend Fred Guttenberg, whose book is released today. Congratulations, Fred, and it's so good to see you again.
Thank you. And for those who can't see what I'm seeing, you have these two amazing dogs hanging with you, and I just think they're awesome. So I'm a dog guy, so I get it.
Thank you. We have a lot of loves in common. We just you were I love in your book. You just say I'm just a kid from Long Island, grew up loving Billy Joel, and oh my God, I love me some Billy Joel. But you were saying it's helped you. Music has helped you at the toughest times.
Billy Joel has no idea about this, and I'm sure he doesn't spend a second of his life really thinking about me. But in the days following what happened to Jamie, I literally, and even weeks and months, I would just get out in my car and I would put on Billy Joel, just me and Billy Joel.
Yeah.
I would drive, it would clear my head and get me straight. I talk about it in the book how he's a helper to me. He just doesn't know it because he helped me through this most awful time in my life. And he's been there for me through my entire life. Nobody's music has ever meant more. So, Billy Joel, if you happen to be listening to Stephanie Miller right now, thank you.
I know he is. I know he is, Fred. And when this is all over, we will have a bottle of red and a bottle of white, and we will.
Let's do it.
Right. Fred, it's interesting you say that because you're one of those people that for everyone from celebrities to the former Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden, counts themselves among your fans. And you remember, I interviewed you on the radio, right? But we never met.
Yeah.
You came up to my panel at Politicon, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but you have the most beautiful, most soulful eyes in the world. And you just came up to the panel and we made eye contact and I burst into tears. Like, I just,
I remember.
I think so many people, Fred, just relate to your pain and how you obviously love your daughter and how you have put it into activism and how you put it out there, and it's just a beautiful thing, and that's why you really. So probably Billy Joel is listening, is my point, and
True.
you're going to get a call after this, so you're welcome.
You know what, Stephanie, and I appreciate you saying that. I'm very thankful that in every place I've been, I've had a chance to get connected to people. And I think, listen, part of why I've been able to just meet amazing people, I've never tried to be anything but Jamie's dad. I'm not in this for politics. I'm not in this as a stepping stone. I am in this because, honestly, guilt. I live with guilt that I didn't use my voice before it was my kid. And that guilt and the need to do something as a father about what happened to my child pushes me every day. And I hope people understand that when the day we sign common sense gun safety legislation into law, and I will stand there with President Biden when it happens, okay? I will turn to a pile of mush and disappear. But not until that day.
Invite me, and I'll be there holding you. I will koala on you. Fred, can I just say, I don't know how long you've listened to the show, but I love the title of your book because this is a running theme of the show. We talk about liberal helpers, and the Steph Head family, and I understand what you mean about a circle of support because when COVID hit, our show could have gone off the air. Everybody lost all their advertisers. It's my listeners, and they did a Patreon page, and through, again, these beautiful letters like you get that you write about in the book.
Yeah.
You don't know what someone's going through, and sometimes the letters I get make me cry but keep me going because you don't know what people are going through, and I know exactly what you mean. The title of the book, Find the Helpers, is so beautiful because there's helpers everywhere. We always joke about be a liberal helper, but it's not even partisan. You talk about Republicans and big Republican donors, and that's a human thing, the loss you've been through, right? And you've had people reach out from every walk of life, right?
A bullet doesn't know if you're a Republican or a Democrat when it hits you. The COVID virus to me is so similar to the issue of gun violence because COVID doesn't know if you're a Republican or a Democrat. Unfortunately, the response seems to gun violence and COVID seems similarly divided between Republicans and Democrats, and it's putting Republicans at great risk, which is unfortunate and sad. But we're now at a point where 200,000 Americans are going to die from this virus. I mean, I think it's any day if you're following the trends. 200,000 people. What's so horrific about this virus, it's they're getting sick alone, they're dying alone, and they need to almost be buried alone with maybe a few friends or family. That's it. And so families are going through this in the most horrific way possible. And I'm here to tell families, as you go through this moment, make sure you know who your helpers are. And if you're not sure, go to a place of worship, go to a community center, and get connected to people. They are there for you. But I also want to tell everyone listening, if you have the chance to be a helper for someone, be there and do it. We Americans, we do need each other. We are here for one another. We will help each other through this.
Fred, I love that it comes from watching Mr. Rogers with your daughter and your son. And you said their favorite part was in the midst of tragedy and catastrophe, find the helpers. Fred Rogers says, always look for the helpers. There will always be helpers, because if you look for the helpers, you'll know that there is hope. So that's where that came from, correct?
It is. And listen, I've come from a family and a community of helpers. It's the way I've always looked at life. My mom was a nurse. My dad was a pharmacist, had owned a pharmacy on Long Island, never missed a day of work, rain, snow, or shine, because his customers needed him. My brother started as an EMT as a teenager and eventually became a physician and was part of running the triage for the World Trade Center. My sister is a physician. My younger brother, who is now 50, after my brother passed away a few years ago, to continue our family legacy, went and became an EMT just to continue the family legacy.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, Mr. Rogers, when he says, always look for the helpers, as long as there are helpers, there's hope. I have hope.
And one of yours has been Joe Biden, which
Yeah.
I love the story that he just out of the blue called you on the 2-year anniversary of Jamie's death. And I mean, boy, talk about not just humans, but presidents. We've never had someone that understands loss the way this man does, right? And tell us about that. And what were you completely shocked, or you just picked up the phone and it?
Well, so the crazy thing about our next president is he's done that for people around this country his entire life, reaching out to people in need, not making a big deal about it. But as I have talked about it, it's amazing how many people have said, he's done that for me. So he did. Just to, back up a little bit, I got to actually first talk to him 10 days after Jamie was killed. He called me. I didn't answer my phone back then because I was getting all sorts of random calls. He left a message and said, I'm going to call you back at such and such time. Please pick up the phone. So I did. And we spoke for 45 minutes. He was on the train from from Virginia to New York for a Beau Biden event. He at the time wasn't running for anything. It was like talking to my uncle. It was talking about family. It was talking about getting through grief. He then invited me and another Parkland parent to an event he was doing in Florida a few weeks later, again for the Beau Biden Foundation. And I figured we would meet with him for a minute because there was going to be several hundred people there. He pulled us into a private room. 20 minutes later, I reminded him he had several hundred people waiting for him. And he just said, this is more important.
Yeah.
And he spent another 20 minutes with us. So the 2-year phone call was just unexpected. It was just him saying, hey, I just want you to know I'm thinking about you today and your family today, and I want to make sure you're okay. He gave me advice about getting through grief that honestly no one else did, talking to me about mission and purpose, but also about how we all grieve differently. And he wanted me to know that so that as a family, we were prepared to do this differently. but to always be supportive of one another as we did it differently. Um, the statistics on families after a grief like this, staying together and strong is not good.
Yeah.
He didn't want that to happen to us. I mean, it was unbelievable the way he was prepared.
Yeah.
And when I hear how many people he does this for around the country, it blows me away.
Isn't it? When people at this point, Fred, we were just talking about this, say they're undecided. We're like, really? Between literally one of the worst humans in the world and literally probably one of the best. I mean, wherever you lie politically, I think people deep down know Joe Biden's just a good man. He's a good, decent man.
He is. Listen, and I don't use the name of the other guy. I just call him the current occupant of the White House because he forget the politics. Listen, what was once the Republican Party doesn't like him, you know?
Yeah.
So I just did a podcast yesterday with David Jolly, a once former conservative member of Congress. They're all horrified by where he's pulling a party they once loved. So it's not just me, a supporter of Joe Biden, saying this. The current occupant of the White House is indecent, dishonest, and he doesn't care about you.
I can't imagine how you feel hearing these Woodward tapes. I mean, you're right about talking about coronavirus, Fred, in that we're almost in these twin genocides, the ongoing gun violence, genocide that you've been talking about, and obviously we've all been talking about forever, and coronavirus. And he just doesn't care about any of it.
But that's who he is. See, and this is what I tell people all the time. I'm actually done trying to assess him in normal terms. It is who he is. He has always been a narcissist. He's never going to be anything but. And we get to fix that November 3rd. What I want people, though, to also focus on November 3rd is those who have enabled him. I blame Mitch McConnell for where we are now more than I do the current occupant of the White House, because McConnell, in the evil McConnell way, enables it, is allowing him to shred this democracy that we took for granted. And now think about this. Our democracy is not really based on laws that are spelled out. It's based upon traditions and norms. And we've always taken it for granted that the person we elect as president would be a caretaker for that, right?
Yeah.
Well, this guy said, no, I'm not going to be a caretaker. I'm going to blow through those traditions and norms. I'm going to change this. And we need to get rid of that before it's too late.
Yeah. Fred, I can't believe that I did not know this, but part of, this book obviously is about your journey since Jamie's death, but I didn't know that 4 months before Jamie's death, you lost your brother. Speaking of all the news stories right now coming together, you lost your brother to 9/11-induced pancreatic cancer. He'd been exposed to so much dust and chemicals at ground zero. The damage caught up with him at age 50. And, you come full circle, Fred, to the story about the, Trump administration stealing funds from the FDNY, health fund. I mean, it's and so I didn't even know that you were already in grief when you lost Jamie, and that you're right, is something that I can imagine you and Joe Biden being able to really bond in a way that a lot of us cannot understand that level of loss.
Listen, Jon Stewart and this other gentleman, John Field, were heroic in fighting, and others, for these benefits for families who are suffering because of ongoing illness related to 9/11. And there's loads and loads of them. And my brother was fortunate. He did well. He was a physician. And he also wasn't married. So, he didn't have a whole family to take care of. You have these families, policemen, firemen. I don't want to hear anybody talk to me about supporting the policemen or firemen if you aren't angry about what this administration is doing to the benefits for those who are policemen and firemen and who were injured that day. Okay. But you have these families who are suffering, who have already lost someone they love or are watching them horribly sick and know they're going to lose them, who are missing out on the income of that person. And this administration was stealing that money.
Yeah.
Okay, it came out last week. This isn't me making this up.
I know. Listen, Fred, I love your anger and your passion. And by the way, I love the story about Nancy Pelosi. You said so. You had a understandable angry outburst at the State of the Union that Nancy Pelosi invited you to, and they took you out of the chamber. And then you called Nancy, like you said, scared, like Mother Superior was going to yell at you. And she's like, "Oh, nonsense, Fred. Don't ever apologize." Because what did Trump say? I forget. I can imagine your reaction just about Second Amendment rights and.
Early on, he started with that illegal garbage and the wall, and I was getting furious listening to that because he, if you listen to it, you would have thought all gun violence is caused by illegals,
Right.
in quotation marks.
Right.
Yet my daughter was killed by an American male. Okay, and so I was getting furious, but I didn't lose it then. But later on in the speech, when he got to this, we will defend your Second Amendment rights, which are under attack, which he means that people like me, which also isn't true. And all those Republicans on that side of the aisle just jumped up and cheered like a bunch of wild animals. I lost it. And I simply said 9 words. What about victims of gun violence like my daughter? Now, the part that people don't all know is sitting behind me was Ronna McDaniel, GOP chairwoman, Kim Guilfoyle, Don Jr.'s girlfriend, and Bradley Parscale, the former campaign manager. Okay. And they were hooting and hollering the whole night. So, but I got pulled out. I was put in cuffs. I was detained. And thankfully, for people like Nancy Pelosi and Congressman Ted Deutsch, as soon as that speech ended, they made sure that that came to an end. But you're 100% right. She called me that night just to make sure I was okay, and I wanted to just burst out and cry. I felt so bad. I was like, I embarrassed you. She's like, what are you talking about? You spoke for America tonight. She made me feel better when I was at my lowest point.